Hi, welcome to the Media and Change series. My guest today is Matthew Adeiza. He's just returned from some field work in Nigeria and some good stories to tell about his study of social media and campaigns. Tell us, Matthew, you were there for a period this summer studying a local election, right?
Yeah.
And it was a competition for governor?
Yes.
Not in the capital city?
No.
So what were some of the election dynamics that were important for this sort of non-national election?
Like the election was more in a local area where the level of internet use is still very low, maybe less than 10% compared to the national average of 30%. Mm-hmm. Of course, a lot of people have mobile phones and they're able to receive text messages. So in terms of the dynamics of communication in the election, most people were able to access information using their mobile phones, either using Twitter or Facebook that they use on mobile phones, which means they have limited capability in terms of what they can watch, the type of pictures they can view, and the quality of maybe communication generally on social media. Mm-hmm. I think the most important aspect of social media that they use were like SMS. So people used SMS to communicate almost on a regular basis, and politicians used SMS to reach voters as well.
So does that make it harder to study social media if most of our attention in the Nigeria case seems to be drawn to the national elections where people get very excited about how candidates use social media or Facebook to reach voters, but most democratic exercises aren't the national elections, they're these local ones. So if it's not about Twitter and less about Facebook, how do you as a social scientist go about studying new digital habits?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I was going, that was one of the challenges I had in mind I would face, because I knew I was going to find it difficult to see people who were using Facebook or Twitter. And then I got there, I discovered like most young people actually use Twitter and Facebook especially Facebook on their mobile phones. Of course, as I said, they have limited capabilities bandwidth, right, in terms of what they could use. And then you also discover that compared to the national, where you have lots of buzz about what people outside the state or outside the country were thinking about them, I think people in the state I studied were more concerned about what was happening within the state. They were more concerned about the various ways they could reach people, which is like either make calls or use SMS. They were more concerned about face-to-face communication. But then the good part of it was you also had it that people did not necessarily consider technology to be bad, though they didn't have access, but yeah, so they were able to talk about what they use or what they think their neighbors
are doing.
Yeah.
And so how does social media fit into the campaign strategy? I guess for a campaign manager who has to help their candidate win, is it a valuable way of engaging with citizens? Is it largely symbolic? What's the value of social media?
Yeah, like social media use was basically symbolic for most candidates. In public discourse, they would normally promote the use of social media because telling people that you use social media makes you look progressive. In other words, you look like, oh, you're modern, you accept technology, you want to join the world, and you want to promote a positive image of the state outside the state. So it makes you look modern. But in terms of strategic communication with candidates, with other candidates, and with voters, I think social media, actually somebody told me that social media is less than 5% of their strategic plan to win the election. So it wasn't so much about what it could do for them, it was so much about the impression people had
of being a modern campaign with a modern candidate.
Yes.
Are there examples of candidates who didn't use social media or didn't do well and suffered on election day?
Not really. You know, the interesting thing is the candidate that wasn't too savvy in terms of social media actually won the election.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then what was the secret of their campaign if it's not about social media communications?
There were a lot of factors that maybe led him to win, but of course there was the talk of stomach infrastructure, which means that he knew what people wanted. And
stomach infrastructure?
Yeah, stomach infrastructure, which means like people want something to eat because the state is poor. So he was able to like either promise them or offer them that. And people saw him as somebody who was able to connect with their needs, their immediate needs, compared to somebody who wants to promote a positive image of the state to the world.
To the world.
Yeah, so he won because he was able to reach people one-on-one. At least that was what they claimed. And I know the other candidates too, like, were able to connect with people one-on-one, but it seems to have done it better. The candidate that won seems to have done it better. And he also used the opportunity that he wasn't too involved in social media to frame the other candidates as being too elitist. So which means if you're on social media, you are there because you want to talk to people outside the state who may not necessarily have any interest in the state.
Local problems.
Yeah. So he saw himself as a man of the people, whereas the other people were just happy going online to go chat with people.
In some other countries, I'm thinking of research from Brazil and Indonesia, it was the challenger candidates, it was the opponents and the people who were less likely to win who used social media and Facebook first because they needed every advantage they could get.
Yeah.
Is that dynamic playing out at this level of politics in Nigeria? The challengers use it more than the incumbents?
So it depends on how we look at it. So like the candidate that lost, though he was the governor in the state, but at the national level his party is in the opposition. So if you look at it that way, you might say, okay, he was the one who is actually the challenger. But within the state, the challenger that won, they didn't use, as I said, they didn't use a lot of social media platforms. He only joined Twitter when a national newspaper ran a story that he wasn't using social media. So there was a story in the Punch newspaper on 25th of March, and then on 26th, he started his Twitter account, and then he was like, I've come online to chat with my friends. But when you actually look at his Twitter timeline, he never engaged people trying to find out anything from them. He was either broadcasting the rallies they have, sharing pictures, or basically accusing the other candidates of maybe
being elitist and
being elitist, of corruption. And then of course all candidates did that, but for him I didn't really see a deliberate attempt to engage people, which is true for other candidates as well.
And post-election, has there been some civic engagement over social media, or is it still not there? Yeah,
like if you look at, I mean, I've been trying to follow the candidates after the election. All of them are still doing broadcasting. So like telling people what they are doing, who they are meeting. But there's no effort so far that I've seen to engage people. There's no civic engagement. Like the party that lost, immediately they lost, they stopped tweeting, they stopped, guys subscribed to the SMS, they stopped sending out SMS. So you look at it that overall it's just about the symbolic nature of saying, okay, I use technology, I'm modern, I want young people to feel that I'm connecting with them.
Could connect,
yeah, even when I'm not. And for me, I think it could have some disempowering maybe effect on young people, the feeling that you're actually being engaged when in reality you're not.
Being used for your vote.
Yeah, well, they want to see it as, the politicians don't want to see it as using people, but maybe that's another way of looking at it. Yeah.
Okay, so it's interesting then that social media had little to do with the campaign communication strategy, but you said earlier that SMS was very important.
Yes.
So what kinds of things do the modern campaigns at the governorship level in Nigeria do for that SMS outreach? I imagine it involves coordinating volunteers and reaching voters.
Yeah. So like what I saw was the two main candidates did not use SMS to coordinate their, bulk SMS now. They used individual SMS messages to coordinate their teams, but they didn't use bulk SMS to coordinate their teams. And then, so you have like each party had the official account from which they send very careful messages. Yeah, because they don't want to appear like they know they could be taken up on it after the election. And then they have other accounts that may not be associated officially with the party or with the candidate, through which they send out rumors, they send out accusations, they send out just messages meant to discredit the opposition.
So this is negative campaigning.
Yeah.
That happens over these alternative accounts.
Yes.
And was one side better than the other at the negative campaigning over these rumors?
I wouldn't know. I don't want to make like say one was better, because they both like used extensive use of SMS. But if you look at the candidate at one, what he was able to do was to identify concerns people had about the governor. Like people had the concern that the governor might actually sack some workers if he won re-election, and then he would send out an I don't know. They claim not to be responsible. That's what all of them did. But people within the state said he was responsible. So they will send out an SMS from an alternative account that says, the governor has agreed with certain people to sack this number of workers after he's re-elected. And then he may not necessarily say vote for me, but by putting out the message that there is a plan, ultimately he's encouraging people to think,
about voting for somebody else.
Exactly. So you have to choose the alternative if you don't want to be sacked.
Right. Yeah. Do you think, is it possible to assess the impact of this negative campaigning? Because it sounds, political campaigns for hundreds of years, right, have involved rumors and false information and misleading information and jokes.
Yeah.
And I assume people forward messages they get by SMS to their friends and family. And so these probably do have an impact on public opinion. But is there any way of knowing what the impact is? Or is it just too chaotic?
I guess the best way would be to conduct a survey, which I didn't do. But I spoke with like dozens of people on the streets, and most of them seem to have gotten one or two of these text messages. And they seem to believe them. For me, that's like the most interesting part of it. So they seem to believe that, these rumors about this governor, they always say there can't be fire without, there can't be smoke without fire. So if these messages keep coming out, that means somebody's planning something that is being leaked.
Close to this, June.
Yeah. So if you look at it that way, yes. I think it had an effect on the way people voted and the way people viewed the election in terms of what they stood to benefit from voting a candidate or the other.
And do you think voters are more likely to trust information that comes over the phone, over their mobile phone, than, or trust rumors that come over the phone more than rumors they would pick up from friends and family? Is there something about getting the SMS message that makes it seem more trustworthy?
Maybe because it could be a sign that somebody within the government is trying to leak the information. So there is the tendency to think, maybe the person that sent this is actually from the government and is trying to save us.
As a source.
Yes.
A credible source.
Yeah. So because you don't know exactly who it's coming from, then there's a tendency to believe it. Like a day before the election, an SMS went out that said the third most popular candidate had stepped down for the candidate that won. And then the SMS...
And that was not true.
Yeah, the other candidate came out to deny it. But when I spoke with people, there was the impression that, maybe he's not trying to officially identify himself with the message. Maybe they have actually agreed and he doesn't want to be on record to have stepped down for him. And I think that affected
the uncertainty of it all.
Yeah, and that played into the hands of the candidate that won.
Did you see any examples of campaign managers using SMS mobile phones for their own survey work, like exit polling systems or checking with voters? There's some campaigns that use mobile phones to sort of test messages and do a little push polling. Did you see any of that sort of strategic use?
So the candidate that lost, who is like the current governor of the state, actually from the people around him, I heard that they gave people phones, and then they gave them cameras just to make sure they record.
Gave people, you mean gave campaign workers?
Yeah, gave campaign workers. So cameras and mobile phones to be able to record cases of malpractice, to be able to send text messages to specific numbers. And then, so the goal is they knew the federal government was going to support this candidate that won, and they knew there was the likelihood of malpractice to support this candidate. So they put that in place just to make sure they'll be able to record
fraud.
This, and then possibly take it to court and win. But I'm not sure they recorded anything significant.
Excellent. Well, thank you for these stories. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
It's an important one. My guest today has been Matthew Adeiza. Has just come back from some field work in Nigeria, and we look forward to the written research. I'm sure it'll show up soon. Thank you. Please have a look at the other videos in the Media and Change series. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah.